USDA Rural Development is able to offer a lifeline by providing flexible solutions for utilities with limited resources. And this is crucial in a state like Indiana where we heavily rely on RD funding. They're able to craft manageable and affordable rates that allow utilities to manage their assets in a way that doesn't leave the resident bearing the burden of project costs through unaffordable water rates.
Frankton is a small rural community. Everybody knows everybody. Everybody grew up here. These water lines, these sewer lines, put in 1940s. So all these lines are approaching 100 years old. So now you're seeing the crumbling of this, and it is important for Frankton to stay viable for the agriculture. The biggest part of Madison County, the revenue is the agriculture here.
Right.
That brings a lot of revenue to central Indiana.
Right.
But you have to have the small towns that sustain the farmer.
You gotta have water, you gotta have wastewater, you gotta have a means for them to have the essential services and the quality of life.
You also gotta have the infrastructure. You gotta have the places for them to shop. There was no funding, hardly no funding available for 40 years, and you see what happened to the infrastructure after there was no money. It just crumbled. It's crumbled.
So I'm curious to know what you both think and what makes Eaton Eaton.
I love the fact that it's small, it feels safe, and the residents in the community come together and are there for each other.
As we were doing the sewer lines, we found that we had galvanized, we had lead pipe and copper pipes all on the ground, so we had to get all that changed. So that's when we went after the funding for the water project. Yeah, we've had a lot of water lines that weren't marked in the town that nobody knew about, and as they're digging to put new water lines in, they've hit them, so that's cost us more money. How are we going to afford this?
Yeah.
I mean, how are you going to tell the residents that we're forcing you to help pay for this project, and we know our community is, like I said, it's a low poverty community, so we're forcing it on them as well as us.
It could be devastating for a small community. You have not only the low income, but you have older people and very fixed income, so you have to think about that and weigh that out. And when you're talking about weighing those things out, utility hikes and people having to choose between paying a water bill and getting food for their kids, I mean those are very real issues.
We as a town couldn't afford to put in new water lines, new sewer lines as a town, because there's not enough money in that town to do something like that.
Yeah.
We have older residents, we have younger residents, low poverty people. I mean, we have a great community, but it's just, it would have been devastating.
Getting a better balance between grants and loans is critical for all the small towns. Most of us have less than $1 million budgets.
If there's a continuation of funding cuts and earmarks, there could be a critical impact on rural residents as available loans become unaffordable for rural communities. And as it goes, the longer the wait, the higher the rate.
Towns like Eaton, towns all across the country, there's water and environmental program funding is at jeopardy of having future cuts, and they're already getting cuts. So what do you think that means? What does that look like in small towns across America?
To me, if that money's going to be cut and there's no money out there for the towns to do it, I'd say the towns will probably go under. I mean, how else are you going to afford to do something like that, even in small communities? I just don't see it happening without USDA funding.
When rural development was able to get a little bit more funding, we're able to do more projects. And the hope is to bring the businesses back to Frankton so the farmers are right here.
Yeah. I mean, I would, obviously urge to continue on with USDA funding and programs like that. A lot of times people move to small communities like ours because they feel safe. They're not in a big city, they're not in a big town, and if those smaller communities don't exist, then they have to go to those places where maybe they don't necessarily feel safe or comfortable. And we want to be that place for those people.
Yeah.
So.
There is a critical need to establish consistent baseline funding that supports the mission of rural development programs so that we can ensure rural communities have access to essential services and sustainable quality of life.